My name is Sophia Carter, and I'm 15 years old. I live in a quiet suburb in Westfield, Illinois, where nothing much happens. At least, that's what I thought. This story still gives me chills, and I'm not sure I'll ever be able to fully shake it off. It happened during a sleepover at my best friend Mia's house. We'd been friends for years, but this was the first time I'd stayed the night at her place. Maya lived in a cozy 2-story house on a cul-de-sac with her parents and younger brother. Her family seemed normal, almost too normal now that I think about it. We started the night with the usual sleepover stuff, watching movies, eating junk food, and gossiping about school. Around 10 p.m., Mia pulled out her family photo album. At first, it was fun looking at pictures of her as a baby, her parents' wedding, and all their family vacations. But then something started to feel off. In every group picture, there was a man in the background. He wasn't standing with the family or doing anything that made sense, just lingering at a distance, like someone who didn't belong. At first, I thought it was some extended family member or friend of her parents, but the way he appeared so consistently gave me a bad feeling. "Hey, who's that guy?" I asked, pointing to one of the photos. Mia leaned closer and squinted. "What guy?" I tapped the man in the photo, a tall figure with dark hair and a blank expression, standing near the edge of the frame. Maya laughed nervously. "Oh, that's probably just some random guy who got in the picture," she said, brushing it off. "Happens all the time, right?" I didn't answer. My gut told me it wasn't that simple. I flipped through more pages, and there he was again. At a park, at a school event, even in their backyard during a barbecue. Every time, he was just there, watching. "Mia, this is really weird. He's in almost all these pictures," I said, my voice quieter now. Mia hesitated, staring at the photos longer this time. "I've never noticed that before," she admitted, but then laughed it off again. "It's probably nothing." The way she dismissed it made me uneasy, but I didn't want to ruin the mood, so I tried to let it go. We went to bed around midnight. Mia's room was on the second floor, and we set up sleeping bags on the floor. Her house was quieter than mine. No creaky pipes or distant highway sounds, just complete silence. That silence woke me up at around 2 a.m. At first, I didn't know what had disturbed me, but then I heard it. The faint sound of floorboards creaking. It wasn't coming from inside the room, though. It was coming from downstairs. I sat up, my heart racing. Maya was still asleep, so I tiptoed to the window, drawn by a feeling I couldn't explain. I pushed the curtain aside and froze. There, standing in the backyard under the dim glow of a motion-activated light, was the man from the photos. He wasn't moving, just standing there, looking up at Mia's window. At me. My breath caught in my throat, and I stumbled back, my hands shaking as I shook Mia awake. "Mia, wake up," I whispered harshly. She groggily sat up, rubbing her eyes. What's wrong?" "There's someone in your backyard." "The guy from the pictures. He's out there," I said, barely able to keep my voice steady. Mia didn't believe me at first, but when I pulled her to the window, her face went pale. "Oh my God," she whispered. "We didn't even think. We just grabbed her phone and called the police." Mia's voice was shaky as she explained what was happening, and the operator assured us that officers were on their way. It felt like hours, but it was only a few minutes before we saw flashing red and blue lights. When the police arrived, the man was gone, but they found fresh footprints in the backyard leading to the side of the house. The officers took our statements and started asking questions. When we showed them the photo album, one of the officers' faces darkened. "This guy looks familiar," he muttered before stepping outside to make a call. That's when we learned the truth. The man was a convicted stalker who had just been released from prison a few months earlier. He had been obsessed with Mia's family for years, tracking them from one event to another without them ever noticing. The officers assured us he'd be caught, but I couldn't shake the image of him standing there, staring up at us. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Neither did Mia. The man was eventually caught a few towns over, but I never stayed at Mia's house again. Even now, every time I see an old photo, I can't help but scan the background, wondering if someone might be watching. My name is Leela Thompson, and I'm 16 years old. I live in a small town called Clearwater, Minnesota. Nothing exciting ever really happens here, which is why this story still haunts me. I'm sharing it now because I don't think I'll ever forget how close I came to something terrible. It started one weekend when my friend Rachel invited me over for a sleepover. Rachel and I had been friends for a few months, though we weren't super close. She had just moved to Clearwater earlier that year, and I felt bad for her because she didn't seem to have many friends. She was a little different, quiet and intense, but I figured she just needed time to adjust. Rachel's house was older, with creaky wooden floors and a lot of dark, empty spaces. Her parents weren't around much. They were always traveling for work, so it was just the two of us in this big, empty house. I didn't think much of it at the time. We started the evening off pretty normal, eating pizza, watching a movie, and talking about school. Around 10 p.m., Rachel said she wanted to shower before bed. While she was upstairs, I stayed in her room, scrolling on my phone. That's when I saw it. A small book sticking out from under her bed. It looked like a diary, the kind with a soft leather cover and a little strap to keep it closed. I don't know why I reached for it. Maybe boredom, maybe curiosity. But I did. I sat on her bed and opened the diary. At first, it seemed normal. Random thoughts, doodles, some poems. But as I flipped through the pages, my stomach dropped. I found what looked like a detailed plan for harming someone. There were sketches of a knife, written timelines, and the name L scrawled across the pages in big bold letters. That's my initial. I felt my heart pound in my chest. The more I read, the more it seemed like she was talking about me. Details about things I'd told her, places we'd hung out, even the outfit I'd worn to school the week before. My hands were shaking. When Rachel came back into the room, I quickly shoved the diary back under the bed, hoping she hadn't noticed. She gave me a strange look but didn't say anything. "Everything okay?" she asked, drying her hair with a towel. Yeah, totally," I stammered. I forced a smile, but my mind was racing. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront her? Call my parents? Leave? My phone was sitting across the room, and I didn't want to draw attention by grabbing it. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to say something. "Hey, I saw this book under your bed. It had some weird stuff in it. What's that about?" Rachel froze for a moment, then laughed. A high-pitched, unnatural laugh. "Oh, that. It's just for my creative writing class," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "We're supposed to write horror stories." I guess I got a little carried away. Her explanation didn't sit right with me, but I nodded, pretending to believe her. "Oh, okay. That makes sense." I lied. As the night went on, Rachel started acting different. She snapped at me over small things, like when I accidentally spilled some water on the floor. She muttered under her breath, words I couldn't quite make out. Her eyes seemed darker, more intense, like she was watching my every move. I tried to act normal, but my gut was screaming at me that something wasn't right. I told her I was tired and wanted to go to bed, hoping she'd calm down if I just stayed quiet. I pretended to fall asleep, lying perfectly still in my sleeping bag. After what felt like an eternity, I heard Rachel get up. She paced around the room for a while, then left, quietly closing the door behind her. This was my chance. I grabbed my phone, slipped on my shoes, and snuck downstairs as quietly as I could. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she might hear it. I unlocked the front door and bolted outside, running down the street until I was far enough away to call my parents. My dad picked me up within minutes, and I didn't tell him everything, just that I felt uncomfortable and wanted to go home. A week later, I heard the news at school. Rachel had attacked another classmate, a boy who had rejected her when she asked him to prom. She was admitted to a psychiatric facility, and people said she'd been struggling with severe mental health issues for years. I don't know if she really planned to hurt me or if it was all in my head, but I haven't been able to sleep soundly since that night. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't left when I did. Would I have been her next target? I guess I'll never know, but I'm just grateful I got out when I did. Ready to feel a chill run down your spine? Join us in the shadows and dive into the world of terrifying tales and creepy encounters. Subscribe now to Shivers in the Dark and hit the bell so you never miss a story that keeps you up at night. My name is Ella Morgan, and I'm 14 years old. I live in Greenfield, a small, quiet town in Oregon, where nothing much ever happens. But that night, everything changed. What started as a fun sleepover turned into one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. It was a Friday night, and my friends Zoe, Hannah, Mia, and I were at Zoe's house for a sleepover. Zoe's house was a bit secluded, backed by a thick line of woods, but it felt safe enough. Her parents were home, and we thought nothing bad could ever happen. The night started out great. We played games, ate way too much candy, and laughed until our stomachs hurt. Around 1 a.m., we decided to watch a scary movie. By the time it ended, it was close to 2 a.m., and we were all starting to feel the weight of sleepiness. As we settled into our sleeping bags, I noticed Hannah wasn't in the room. "Where's Hannah?" I asked. Mia shrugged. "Probably in the bathroom." We waited for a few minutes, chatting quietly, but Hannah didn't come back. Zoe eventually got up to check. She returned with a puzzled look. "She's not in the bathroom," Zoe said, "and I didn't see her in the hallway either." At first, we thought maybe Hannah was trying to prank us. She loved pulling little stunts to scare people, so we decided to play along, calling her name and pretending we were scared. "Hannah, come on, this isn't funny," I shouted, but my voice echoed through the house with no response. That's when Zoe noticed the back door was unlocked. "I swear I locked this earlier," she said, her voice shaking. Panic began to set in. It wasn't like Hannah to just wander off, especially in the middle of the night. The thought of her being outside alone in the dark woods sent chills down my spine. We grabbed flashlights and hurried outside, calling her name. The air was cold, and the silence was deafening. We scanned the yard and edges of the woods, our fear growing with every passing second. Then Mia spotted something on the ground near the tree line. "It's her phone," she cried, holding it up. Next to it was a set of fresh footprints in the soft dirt, leading deeper into the woods. None of us wanted to go in, but we had no choice. We followed the trail, our flashlights bouncing off the trees and casting eerie shadows. "Do you think someone took her?" Zoe whispered, her voice barely audible. "Don't say that," I replied, but deep down, I was thinking the same thing. The trail led us to an old, abandoned shed we hadn't noticed before. The door was slightly ajar, creaking in the wind. My stomach twisted as we stood there, staring at it. "We need to call the police," Maya said, her voice trembling. Zoe was already dialing, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. We didn't dare go inside, so we waited in terrified silence until the police arrived. When the officers entered the shed, we all held our breath. Moments later, they came out carrying Hannah. She was tied up but alive, her face pale and streaked with tears. "It's okay, you're safe now," one of the officers assured her. We all ran to her, crying and hugging her. Hannah was too shaken to talk, but the police told us they believed a man had taken her. He had fled before they arrived, leaving behind a knife and a rope. It turned out the man was a known predator, someone who had been arrested before for stalking young girls. Somehow, he had managed to slip into the neighborhood that night, unnoticed. For weeks after, none of us could sleep. Every sound in the night felt like a threat. Zoe's parents installed cameras and motion lights, but it didn't help much. Knowing the man was still out there made us feel like we were being watched. Hannah eventually told us how she had stepped outside for a moment to get some fresh air when the man grabbed her. She didn't see his face clearly, but the memory of his grip haunted her. To this day, I can't forget the fear we felt that night. I've never been to another sleepover since. I don't think I ever will.